Hello and welcome, everyone, to Days of Roar, a Detroit Tigers podcast brought to you by the Detroit Free Press. I'm your host, Tigers beat writer Evan Petzold, and today I'm joined by two special guests, Scott Bentley, the host of the Locked On Tigers podcast, and Bobby Scales, the radio analyst of the Tigers. I'm still away from my daily coverage of the Tigers, and shout out to Free Press columnist Shauna Windsor for covering the team throughout the 6-game road trip. But I have good news to report. My son Daxton had successful skull surgery from atopic craniosynostosis. The surgery happened last Monday. We spent a couple of days in the hospital, and we've been home since Wednesday afternoon. He's recovering well, and we're enjoying the family time together during this period of time as he recovers. As I mentioned last week, I'll be back on the daily coverage of the Tigers, beginning with the All-Star game in mid-July. But as for the Tigers this week, it was a 4-2 record, 1-2 versus the Washington Nationals at Nationals Park, and 3-0 versus the Cleveland Guardians at Progressive Field. Aside from the games, Kerry Carpenter landed on the injured list with a right hamstring strain. Sawyer Gipson-Long landed on the injured list with neck stiffness, and Reese Olson returned from the injured list after missing nearly 2 months with right ring finger inflammation. We'll get into all of that later on in the show. But let's dig deeper into Sunday's 7-2 win over the Cleveland Guardians in 10 innings, in which the Tigers scored 6 runs in the 10th inning. The Guardians were 1 strike away from ending the game with a win when Emmanuel Clase threw a wild pitch. And on that wild pitch, pinch runner Zach McKinstry scored from third base to tie the game at 1 run apiece with 2 outs in the top of the 9th inning. And then the Tigers exploded for 6 runs in the 10th inning, fueled by a 3-run home run from Trey Sweeney, and then a 2-run home run from Riley Greene. That's how the Tigers got the win in the series finale, and the Tigers swept the series against the Guardians, with the Guardians now losing 10 games in a row. The Tigers won 2-1 on Friday on solo home runs from Zach McKinstry and Wencio Perez as part of a 7-hit game. The Tigers then won 1-0 on a solo home run from Spencer Torkelson as part of a 2-hit game. So the Tigers were out-hit by the Guardians Friday and Saturday, but they still managed to come away with 1-run wins in both games. And then Sunday, the Tigers had 1 hit for the entire game in a 1-1 tie going into the 10th inning, and then they scored 6 runs on 5 hits in the 10th inning as part of a 6-hit game in a 7-2 win. So it was 4 runs on 10 hits in the first 27 innings, followed then by 6 runs on 5 hits in the 10th inning of Sunday's game. 4 runs on 10 hits in the first 27 innings, and the Tigers swept the series against a division rival. Somehow, the Tigers got it done. They won all 3 games. So, look, coming off of this series, if anyone is concerned about the offense, just want to make it very clear, the Tigers have a 121 WRC plus since June 1st, so 21% above league average. That's second best in MLB, trailing only the Tampa Bay Rays. If anything, be concerned about the pitching staff. It's a pitching staff that ranks 16th in MLB with a 4.10 ERA since June 1st. And oh, by the way, the Tigers have an 11-9 record in their past 20 games. Maybe that concerns you. But then you got to take a look at the fact that they also have a 6-2 record in their past 8 games. So if anyone is concerned for whatever reason, I'm here to tell you everything is going to be okay. This is still the best team in baseball. Speaking of the best team in baseball, it's time for an MLB standings update. The Tigers have a 57-34 record. That leads MLB 1 game ahead of the Los Angeles Dodgers. That leads the American League 1.5 games ahead of the Houston Astros. And that leads the American League Central 13.5 games ahead of the Minnesota Twins. Now we're going to get into the Big Two, and to help us with the Big Two, we're joined by Scott Bentley, host of the Locked On Tigers podcast. Scott, thank you for joining the show this week.
Of course, brother. Of course. I'm glad you reached out. Yeah, we've obviously we talk quite often, but we haven't actually done this. So I'm glad to finally do it.
No better time than now. And let's get into question 1 of the Big Two. Look, it's only July 7th. The Tigers still have 71 games to play. That's about 45% of the season. But as we sit here today, is the American League Central race over?
Yeah, I almost feel like the only hesitation I have isn't actually because I'm not confident in the team or like the fact that they will win. I almost just feel like it's a baseball like jinx thing where I'm like, don't mess with fate comment like situation where I'm like, I don't really want to be like, oh yeah, it's completely over. It's not even the All-Star break. It's done whenever. Like, a year ago, right? Like the Tigers didn't win the division, but like they went from whatever the number, 0.2%, whatever the Fangraphs number was for us to make the playoffs, and they did. And so I don't know, like we've seen runs before. The only team that the only team that gives me remote pause is the Twins. And that's just because they're the most inconsistent team ever. And I have no clue. Like they won like 13 in a row in April at one point, and then lost 15 in a row. Like they just don't know what they're doing. And that's, that's the Minnesota Twins. But I guess I don't want to say like, oh, it's over. But at the same time, like I'm not worried about the Central. No, like I fully expect I think the expectation, it's very fair, whatever they are, 13.5, 14.5 up. The expectation should be like, they should probably bring this home. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned the Fangraphs playoff odds because I went back to the Fangraph playoff odds for this season, and the Tigers have a 98.5% chance to win the American League Central. The Tigers also have a 99.6% chance to make the postseason and an 11% chance to win the World Series. But we're talking about the AL Central, so let's focus on that 98.5% chance to win the division. That's the Tigers. The Twins, though, they have a 1.1% chance. The Royals have a 0.3% chance. The Guardians have a 0.2% chance. So, yeah, you go back and you remember when the Tigers, they had a 0.2% chance to make the playoffs in 2024. They go on that magical 31-11 run. They actually go and they clinch a spot in the playoffs. Like, that's what it would be like if the Cleveland Guardians came all the way back to win the division. Like, right now, Fangraphs, it has the Twins as the biggest threat to the Tigers, like you mentioned, but it's only a 1.1% chance. And I hate to say it's over because it's not over yet, but unless one of these teams has a 2024 Tigers miracle run in the tank, like whether it's the Twins, the Royals, or the Guardians, like the AL Central winner is going to be the Tigers, and it's going to be the Tigers for the first time since 2014. That was the final year of 4 consecutive AL Central championships. And then that kind of leads to the obvious question, like if the Tigers are going to win the AL Central, you're going to play the Blue Jays, the Yankees, the Rays, the Astros, the Mariners, like one of those teams, two of those teams at some point in the postseason. So what do the Tigers need to do to ensure that they win in the ALDS and the ALCS and then put themselves in the best position to win the World Series? Like it all comes down to the July 31st trade deadline. Like maybe you trade for Aroldis Chapman. Maybe you trade for Edward Cabrera. Maybe you trade for Eugenio Suarez. Like that's Aroldis Chapman from the Boston Red Sox to join the bullpen. Edward Cabrera from the Miami Marlins to join the starting rotation. Eugenio Suarez from the Arizona Diamondbacks to play third base. And look, if the Marlins aren't going to trade Edward Cabrera, who's under team control through the 2028 season, then maybe you go get Zach Eflin from the Baltimore Orioles and he joins the starting rotation. Like all three of those guys, they're free agents after 2025, Aroldis Chapman, Eugenio Suarez, and Zach Eflin. But I'd love to see the Tigers get a controllable starter. But even if they can't do it, like those are some big boy names that could help you win the World Series in 2025. Even if it means you don't have Max Clark on your roster in 2027 when Tarik Skubal is pitching for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Like you have to capitalize on winning the World Series now because Tarik Skubal is all but guaranteed to be in a different uniform after the 2026 season. Like there is no guarantee. And on top of that, right, like Tarik Skubal is going to be gone after 2026. And there's no guarantee that the 2026 Tigers will be better than the 2025 Tigers. So like the opportunity is now. I think you put all the chips in. But do the Tigers go a different route? Maybe they go the Ramon Urias route where you get a right-handed hitting infielder. He hits against left-handed pitchers. He's like an offensive upgrade from a guy like Andy Ibanez. Or do you go for Taylor Ward, right-handed hitting outfielder? He crushes lefties. It's an offensive upgrade from Jahmai Jones. Those are some not so big boy names that maybe protect that long-term sustainability, but maybe you don't offer you the best chance to win the World Series in 2025. So again, I know we went from like the AL Central to the trade deadline, but Scott Bentley, not Scott Harris. I didn't expect to go on this rant, but like since we're here, trade deadline's coming up. Like what do you want to see the Tigers do? And would you trade a guy like a Max Clark or a Jose Briseño or a Thyron Lorenzo or even Kevin McGonigal? Like walk me through what you're thinking because I know we don't want to jinx it, but if the AL Central really is in the bag, we got to be talking about what's it going to take to get to the World Series.
No, I completely agree. And I think the Skubal point you made is honestly the point that I also want to continue to drive home. It's like, even if you are the biggest optimist about the Skubal situation or the biggest pessimist, it doesn't really matter. Like, you are only guaranteed the next year and a half, right? And even if, again, you want to be like, oh, like they'll definitely extend him, whatever, it'd be stupid not to. That's fine. You are only guaranteed 100% that he is on this roster for the next year and a half, and you have to take advantage of that. I also think that this front office, they haven't been in this position, so we'll see, right? We haven't seen this regime in a position where, like, hey, you know, you're a big time buyer, you have one of the better records in baseball, you're trying to capitalize. I don't get the vibe, and this is from like my couch, but I don't get the impression that this front office is going to be big on let's empty the farm for rentals. I feel like if they do, they are going to move a Lorenzo or a Clark or anybody of that magnitude, Briseño even, I think that is going to have to be somebody with multiple years or, at least a year and a half of control. McGonigal, I'll be real with you. Unless you're getting Paul Skeens, I'm not sure there's a player on the planet that the Tigers would trade McGonigal for.
I'm right there with you, so I agree on that completely.
Yeah, I really, really find it hard to believe that there's too much of a player out there for that. But I think what they need at the deadline is painfully obvious over the last like 2 or 3 weeks is starting pitching depth and bullpen help. And I think that's like every single team at the deadline that's trying to make a run ever could say that. So like whatever. But I think it's very apparent that they need, especially with the injuries to Job, Olson and Mize have both had like reasonably long stints on the injured list at points. Like you need starting pitching depth. Bullpen, I know you talk about it all the time. I talk about it all the time. Pretty much anybody with, eyes and ears talks about it all the time. This bullpen needs swing and miss desperately, like so desperately. I cannot overemphasize enough how much they need strikeout and swing and miss stuff. And I like that you bring up Chapman because he's a rental. I feel like I don't know. It's a give and take, right? Because like you either have, okay, this guy's a rental and he'd cost less, but like he's gone at the end of the year. Or you have, well, this guy's going to cost a little bit more, but you have him for whatever, a year and a half, 2.5 years. So I would love to see them go after somebody like that. They desperately need someone that can get whiffs. And if Alex Lang is the answer to that, then so be it. But I'm not like convinced on that really. They need outside help in that regard. If they can get a starting pitcher, like you mentioned, I think that's good. Offensively, to me, is the question. Cause like everything is such a well-oiled machine and you're getting, this production from like Zach McKinstry and like Colt Keith turn it around and stuff. Like, unless you want to go and give up high-end, prospects to bring in like a big legitimate, like this guy's one of the better position players in baseball. Like, I'm not sure there's a ton of room for improvement offensively. As weird as that sounds, like they could use a bat. They don't have that. They have Riley Greene, and then nobody else is really in that like perennial all-star, borderline superstar offensive production. But like, I don't know, Zach McKinstry has an 815 OPS or whatever. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't really know how much you can go get Suarez. He is not a good defensive third baseman. He's a rental, and really all he has is power. He's not a big, like put the ball in play guy. He's not a huge walk guy either traditionally, but you get some thump. I don't know. I go back and forth on the bats a lot. I'm rambling. I agree with you with the pitching though. Starting pitching depth and bullpen help has to be the two biggest things. And everyone's going to look at Chapman naturally.
Yeah. The thing about the offense is just like you're spot on. There aren't a ton of names out there when it does come to a right-handed hitting,
right,
third baseman, right? And I know everybody at the beginning of the season, and the Blue Jays, obviously, they are now playing for the postseason, but everybody talked about Bo Bichette. And even if the Blue Jays were out of the mix, like, look at what you got. You got Javier Báez playing shortstop. Like, who needs Bo Bichette when you got Javier Báez doing what he's doing? So, yeah, the emergence of a Javier Báez and the emergence of a Zach McKinstry, it makes it a little bit difficult to add. But at the same time, like, I just hope the Tigers don't get too cute and go for a Ramon Urias type and give him ABs to maybe, do what Andy Ibanez did, but just a little bit better. Or a Taylor Ward, you go get a guy like that because he's a little bit better than Jahmai Jones. Like, I'm not so sure that really is the answer either.
Go big or go home.
That's kind of where I'm at. But again, to go big, like it's really hard to find those guys, at least on rental
For
deals.
sure.
You have to go out and get somebody who's controllable. So we'll see what ends up happening. I think the Tigers do have a good foundation in the sense of they've got some pieces. You know, you got Riley Greene, you got Spencer Torkelson, you got Gleyber Torres, you got Kerry Carpenter. Like there are some dudes on this team that can play, but you would just like to see like one more big boy bat. And I mean, you'd like to see an Alex Bregman type on this team, right? Like that would be the difference maker, right? And it was the difference maker all off season and obviously didn't go the Tigers' way. But that's the kind of bat that you would like to see the Tigers acquire at the deadline. I just don't know that it's there for them to go get.
No, and I completely agree with that. Like that is the weird situation they're in with the offense is it really has to be either no one or like a huge name because everybody has a 700 plus OPS. Like there's, you know what I mean? There's no use for like, oh, like let's go out and get, you know, so-and-so who's, you know, has a 110 OPS plus and is like slightly better than league average. The whole lineup this year has been around league average or slightly better. Like, why would you give up assets for a lateral move? Like, you either have to really go big and get a Bregman type, or you really, like, I don't want to say don't add offense. I think they should add a bat. I very much am in the camp that they should, but I worry almost, this is going to sound wild, but like, I worry that the offense, the lineup has been too good and they're just not going to, which is, I could not fathom saying those words, you know, 3-4 months ago, but like that's kind of where I am at with the bats is like, I don't know, they might just look top to bottom and be like, well, we're not giving up Clark, McGonigal, Lorenzo and Briseño. So we're not going to go get any of the big bats at the deadline. And the rest, you know, the rentals and kind of the scraps left over are pretty much the production we've already had. So we're good. And they might just sit on their hands, which would frustrate me. And I think a lot of people, but that's, I don't know. The thing I'm confident in is they'll get somebody in the bullpen. And I'd be stunned if they didn't get anybody to add to the starting rotation as well, with the fact that you know, I'm not sure they're going to see Alex Cobb this year.
3 weeks until the trade deadline. We'll see what happens. Question 2 of the big two. The Tigers have 4 All-Stars in 2025. Tarik Skubal, Riley Greene, Gleyber Torres, and Javier Báez. What stands out about those players in the first half of the season? And were any Tigers snubbed from the All-Star game?
I don't know. Like, I mean, we could start with the 4 players that were chosen. I think I love it. And like, I don't think that Javi Báez has been the best center fielder in the American League in the first half of the season. I want to make that clear. I have friends who are like Red Sox fans, like Rafael has had a great year. You know, there's some people that are pretty deserving. That being said, he's a brand. Right? He's a brand. He's a huge brand. There's all the Cubs fans that maybe aren't hip to the American League and see Javi Báez's name. And it's a cool story. And he's, you know, Benetti calls him the comeback player of the year all the time. Like all these great things that I think are very true. And I'm glad that he's going to get honored. I really am. I'm not trying to like take anything away from him. I think what he's done this year has been incredible. I think it's just more of like a cool story than it is like, yeah, he's been the best center fielder in the American League for sure. Skubal, obviously, there's not even, he's like so good. There's not even much like to say. It's like, yeah, like, you know, Tarik Skubal. Yeah. And like Gleyber's been great, weak second base here, but he's been the best of them. So I think he deserves it. And then Riley Greene is absolutely unbelievable. So like, I think that the biggest thing you notice with 3 of those 4, the 4th being Javi and not really included in this conversation is like those 3 you are relying on heavily for wins every single time they're in the lineup, right? Every 5th day, you go out and I think we all at this point expect to win when Tarik Skubal starts. It's just like, yeah, like it's almost become a must-win situation where it's just like, yeah.
It's a 14-4 record this season in games he starts.
Right. Like you should probably win we don't want a Paul Skeens situation. Like we should probably win every time he's on the bump. Gleyber has just been such an on-base machine at the top of the lineup, and Riley Greene has been an RBI machine scoring Gleyber Torres a lot of the time. And so I think that there are so many great stories with this lineup this year that we didn't expect, right? There's Torkelson is swinging it better the last couple of weeks. Obviously 20 home runs before the All-Star break. Obviously we mentioned Javi, right? Like there's so many, Dylan Dingler, there's so many stories of great production kind of up and down the lineup, but you really want to focus on 3 guys that you say are the 3 biggest like difference makers of the team. I'm glad that those 3 are all starting because they are very obviously the I mean, dare I say, the biggest reasons why the Tigers find themselves with the most wins in the American League. So I think that is kind of the biggest thing I notice. I want to ask you, are you a big like not all-star voting, but like you look at someone's BREF page and you're like, oh, like all-star games really matter to me? Or are you all like, oh, it's kind of just like a fun thing in the middle of the summer? Cause like I like 50 people got snubbed, dude. Like every fan base thinks half their roster got snubbed. Like, yeah, like for sure. But, I think Springer probably deserved it more than, a lot of guys on the Tigers. I don't know. I go back and forth a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I think about snubs and like, as for like the fan voting, that's the fan voting. And so I guess there is a little bit of like, again, like look at the Kansas City Royals had like their entire roster, starting an all-star game, right? Like that probably shouldn't happen.
Omar and Fonte getting votes. Yeah.
Right. So like, the fan voting is the fan voting. But again, like you look at what the players did, like the players voted Alejandro Kirk over Dylan Dingler. The players voted Jonathan Aranda over Spencer Torkelson. The players voted Alex Bregman over Zach McKinstry. Like the players voted Brent Rooker over Colt Keith. The players also voted in Garrett Crochet and Max Fried and Hunter Brown over Casey Mize. And the players voted in Aroldis Chapman, Josh Hader, and Andres Munoz over Will Vest. Like, no disrespect to the Tigers players, but like, I can't disagree with any of those decisions from the players. Like, I don't see any snubs there. And then you go to the commissioner's office. The commissioner's office then goes next, right? It's the fan voting and the player voting, then the commissioner's office. MLB has to make 6 selections to fill out the rest of the AL roster. 3 of those 6 picks are used for teams that didn't have any all-stars in the fan and player voting. So, you got pitchers, Chris Bubich, Yusei Kikuchi, Shane Smith, Brian Wu. And then you got position players, Jazz Chisholm Jr. and Bobby Witt Jr. as well. So like for me, like Jazz and Bobby over Zach McKinstry, like that makes sense. And then Chris Bubich, Brian Wu over Casey Mize, like that makes sense. Like there are a lot of Tigers that were worthy of making the All-Star game, but like I don't think that any of those who didn't make it were snubbed. It's not that I'm anti Dylan Dingler or Spencer Torkelson or Zach McKinstry or Colt Keith or Casey Mize or Will Vest. Like there are just a lot of really great players in this game. And so that's why to an extent, yes, like all-star game nominations do matter to me because there are a lot of really great players in this game. Like there is a reason why Spencer Torkelson is not an all-star and Zach McKinstry is not an all-star. It's not because those guys aren't good. Will Vest, right? Like Will Vest is the Tigers saves leader. There's a reason why those guys are not all-stars, and it's not because they're not good players. They are, but there's a lot of great players in this game. And so that's why to me, it still does matter, even though the fan voting can make it kind of shaky.
If Canely doesn't completely implode this week, is he an all-star?
I don't think so, because I think the league cares a ton about saves. I think players and the commissioner's office, I think they also care a ton about saves. And again, when you're looking at bullpen, it's like, you throw a bone to like the White Sox and you throw a bone to like, some of these teams that they need all-star selections. You got to get somebody from those teams in because every team has to be represented.
We've been there. Gregory Soto every year, Joe Jimenez, right? Like that was like, we are very hip to that. Yeah, for sure. No, I completely agree with everything you said there. I think like it is so important to remember that every team has to have representation. Like that limits the amount of roster spots so much. And I think the amazing thing with the Tigers this year is not that they have 26 all-star caliber players. It's that they have like 25 or 26, like 2+ WAR players. Like that's the crazy thing about how the production has been divvied up. Like it's not this overpowering, and like Riley Greene is should get MVP votes down ballot, right? Like I'm not trying to disrespect the top dogs that we just talked about, but like every team has, at least if they're remotely competitive, has like a top end, high end talent guy like that. So I don't know. The only one that I somewhat push back on, and it's more to do with the formatting than it is like he deserved to be in at third base over Bregman. Cause like Bregman has matched his production in like a month of fewer games. Like Bregman's been phenomenal, but like, we are to a point now where there should be like a utility player vote, and Zach McKinstry should have ran away with that. Like that's kind of where that's like the only one where it's like in a perfect world, I think he should get recognized for, like he played first base today, dude. Like he is so awesome, and he has an OPS in the 800s and is hitting lefties well this year out of absolute nowhere. Like there's so much good that Zach McKinstry, and he's so valuable. He's almost got 3 wins before the break, dude. Like, I would have loved to seen him get recognized. But again, like, that's one where I think, vote in the super utility player or something like that, as opposed to like, he should be the third baseman over Bregman type of thing.
There's no question about it with Zach McKinstry. Like, I do think that even though he may not be again, who knows with injuries and what might happen, but even if he's not an all-star this year, I do think we should be talking about him as a Gold Glove winner at the utility player position, because again, Gold Glove is another, like Gold Glove, they sometimes in the Gold Glove, a little bit too much is, given to the offense, right? Like, we look at guys in the Gold Glove and it's like, hey, are they producing offensively? Are they not? And sometimes that tips the scales a little bit. And Zach McKinstry is producing offensively, and he's playing all over the place. And when you look at what he's doing from a WAR standpoint, like, look at F4, right? It's incredible what he's been able to accomplish. It's a 2.6 F4, and that ranks 11th in the American League. 11th in the American League among position players is Zach McKinstry with a 2.6 F4. Yes. So Zach McKinstry definitely got to tip the cap. Again, Alex Bregman is Alex Bregman. The players are always going to vote in Alex Bregman over Zach McKinstry. I'm sorry. That's just the way that it goes. But to get back to the main guys that made the All-Star team, you talk about Tarik Skubal, Riley Greene, Gleyber Torres, and Javier Báez. Like, to kind of walk back through those players and just what they've meant to the Tigers this year. I mean, Tarik Skubal, the best in the world, right? The best in the world. It's a 2.02 ERA, 14 walks, 148 strikeouts, over 116 innings and 18 starts. Like, just think about those numbers. A 2.02 ERA, 14 walks, 148 strikeouts, over 116 innings. Second in the AL with a 2.02 ERA, trailing only Hunter Brown, but he's ahead of Jacob deGrom and Max Fried and Chris Bubich and Garrett Crochet. Like, if he keeps this up, he will repeat as the AL Cy Young winner, even though Hunter Brown is making things interesting. And either way, my biggest thing with Tarik Skubal in this All-Star game is that he deserves to start. He was snubbed last year by Bruce Bochy. Bruce Bochy went a different direction. He went with Corbin Burns. It should have been Tarik Skubal. But it's a decision that Yankees manager Aaron Boone gets to make. And look, if the Yankees want to sweeten up Skubal leading up to his free agency after the 2026 season, and you better believe the Yankees are going to be in those sweepstakes, it'd probably be wise for Booney to give Skubal the start in the All-Star game. And then you go to Riley Greene. Like, this guy is becoming a superstar in the league. We've talked about it time and time again. You're right. He will get MVP votes. I think if he takes that next step, he could be an MVP winner. This is a guy that, like, among MLB players aged 24 or younger, he is second right now with a 145 WRC plus. He trails only James Wood, but he's ahead of Corbin Carroll, Pete Crow Armstrong, CJ Abrams, Jacob Wilson, Junior Caminero, Gunnar Henderson, Jason Dominguez, Zach Neto, Wyatt Langford, Julio Rodriguez. Like, do I need to keep going? Those are some legit names. Riley Greene is one of the best young players in the game. That leads me to believe that he is going to be a legit, bona fide, no doubt superstar in his age 25 or 26 season, because he's still so young. Like, I think Riley Greene has some things to work on. He could cut down on those strikeouts, but as soon as he does, immediate MVP candidate could happen as soon as the 2026 season. And then Gleyber Torres, like, he's been Mr. Consistent for the Tigers. It's a 278 batting average, 9 home runs, 48 walks, 42 strikeouts. That's impressive. More walks and strikeouts in 78 games. His 387 on base percentage, it ranks 6th among MLB players, 6th best in OBP, trailing only Aaron Judge, Will Smith, Jonathan Aranda, Juan Soto, and James Wood. Tigers signed this guy to a 1-year, $15 million contract. He wants at least $100 million in the upcoming offseason, his second round of free agency. If Gleyber Torres keeps doing this, he is going to get his 9 figures. It might not be with Tigers, but some team is going to pay him at least $100 million over 4 or 5 years for what he is doing right now. And then Javi Báez, you mentioned Jason Benetti calling him the comeback player of the year. I think Jacob deGrom maybe could be that guy, but if it's not Jacob deGrom, it's going to be Javi Báez. Like, if Jacob deGrom slows down or Javi heats up, I think Báez could be taking home that hardware. He's hitting 280. I can't believe I'm saying this. He's hitting 280 with 9 home runs and 37 RBIs in 75 games. You remember his OPS, it went from 671 in 2022 all the way down to 515 in 2024. And now it's up to a Tigers best, since he's been with the Tigers, it's been his best OPS with the Tigers, a 761 OPS in 2025. And he's doing that offensively while playing like shortstop, center field, third base, second base, put him wherever he's going to contribute. Like, he has been the most surprising contributor to the 2025 Tigers. And that's part of why, again, I might hate the fan voting sometimes. I think it's like a little bit iffy, but at the same time, like, I love it for stories like Javi Báez. Like, the fans can vote him in to be the center fielder in the All-Star game. Like, that is fun. Like, you've got all of Chicago voting for him, all of Puerto Rico voting for him, and you got Tigers fans voting for him. I'm glad the fans rewarded him, not only with an all-star selection, but an all-star start in the outfield alongside Riley Greene and Aaron Judge. It's been a lot of fun to watch these guys, Javier Báez, Gleyber Torres, Riley Greene, Tarik Skubal. You could not have said it any better when you said those four players, probably the most impactful to what the Tigers have done this season, and that's why they deserve to be in the all-star game.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I agree with the Javi thing too. Like, I didn't want to make it sound like I was hating either. Like, I love the fact that the fans, right, like, were able to reward him and that he is a story that is, you know, like, really sweeping baseball, right? Like, every time you open social media, some, you know, baseball pundit is talking about how Javi is doing this, and like his walk-offs and everything have been highlighted nationally. It is really cool. I think one of the coolest, I guess, is the word things about having four players, hopefully four starters. If they give it to Fried, I'm going to lose my mind. Okay. Let's just make that clear though.
What about Hunter Brown? What about Hunter Brown?
Brown at least is a little easier to stomach for me because he has like a 1.9 ERA. It should be Skubal. I'm not.
He's the most dominant pitcher in the world right now, right? There's no question.
I agree. I completely agree. But my worry is Boone's going to be like, hey, Fried, like, go, you know what I mean? But I think the contract thing is interesting now. You know, they're trying to be like, hey, Scoob, like, look how cool Boone is. The coolest thing for me is just that, like, the Tigers have brandable players again. And I know that sounds like weird, but like there is no brand when you're sending, you know, your one reliever that throws 100 and has no clue where it's going every year. Like, that's, and I was the biggest defender of Soto. Let's make that clear. But like, that was, you know, every year that was just who it was. Or, you know, like I said, Joe Jimenez back in the day, or Castellanos, and then he gets traded. Like, this is the first time in a long time that the Tigers have had like, you know, El Mago, you know, Javi is a Tiger and is an all-star. Like, that's what Al Avila prayed for. Okay. Like, that is what Al Avila wanted, you know, 4 years ago. And like Skubal, obviously best pitcher on the planet. I completely agree with you. Like, that's a brand. And like Riley Greene is a young superstar in this league and is only going to grow in popularity more and more. Gleyber, to your point, like, I feel like there's, ADHD, I don't want to go on a different tangent, but like, I feel like there's a stigma with Gleyber about like, oh, you know, it's only a 1-year deal. You either have to extend him or trade him. It's like, no, like, I don't know. I don't agree with that. There's a 1-year deal for a reason. Like, I would love to extend him. He's been incredible.
And the qualifying offer is a real thing, though. So even if you don't extend him, you don't have to trade him. Like, you can keep him at the end of the season. You can give him the qualifying offer, and he's going to reject it because he wants to go out there and he wants to get his $100 million, and more power to him for that. But then you get a draft pick back. So like, it really isn't just like one or the other. The qualifying offer gives you that third option, and that's probably the option the Tigers take.
Right. And I agree with you as it stands right now. I also think like he took a 1-year deal for a reason. He was like, I'm betting on myself. And the Tigers said, we thought we needed production at second base. Like, this is, you know, a kind of a match made in heaven thing. And he's backing it up. Like, he bet on himself and he won. Like, that's not like a bad thing to be a team that people can go to and succeed and whatnot. I don't know. I feel like the goal is winning, dude. Like, the goal is winning. And if you can extend Gleyber, then great. But like, the goal is winning Major League Baseball games. That's the whole point of all of this. And if he can do that, even if it is just on a 1-year deal and then he gets too, you know, expensive for you, then so be it. He did his job and you did as an organization, your job for the 1 year he was here. So I love the 4 that they picked. I think they're all either great. They're all great stories, but you know, it's 4 people that genuinely have been pillars to the team's success so far.
It's cool what you said about the Tigers, and you're right. This is a brand. It's a new era, and we're living in it. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're joined by Bobby Scales, the radio analyst of the Tigers. Scott Bentley, thank you so much for joining me for the Big Two.
Appreciate you, brother. Yeah, you know, Bobby's the man. I don't want to precede Bobby Scales. So yeah, appreciate you having me on as always.
Everyone, I'd like to welcome Bobby Scales, the radio analyst for the Detroit Tigers, to the Days of Roar podcast. Once again, for any of our new listeners, Bobby is a regular on this program, so you'll hear plenty more from him throughout the season. We're lucky to have him on this week's episode. Bobby, thank you for joining me.
EP, what up, though? You're always a pleasure to be on with you, and yeah, this is fun, so let's do it.
How much fun are you having right now? You know, following this team around, calling the games, seeing the way things have been unfolding, beginning of the season. Now we're to the middle part of the season, and these guys are still the best in baseball.
Yeah, no, a lot of fun. This team is really good. They're good from a baseball perspective. Obviously, you know, from a culture perspective too, they're managed well. These guys are totally bought into the approach that they have. They know that if they're all pulling on the rope, doing what AJ asked them to do and serving whatever role that they're being asked to serve, that they're better for it. And it's bearing itself out. It doesn't hurt that you have the best pitcher on the planet in your uniform too. And then, you know, just on top of it, they've won some improbable games, none more so than the one here in Cleveland on Sunday. And it's just fun. It's just fun. Easy team to root for too. Good dudes. So it's a fun team to root for.
And it feels like even though it's been going on for a while, it's kind of just getting started too. When you look at the fact that the Tigers have played 91 of 162 games in the regular season, they've won 57 of them, but there's still 71 games to go in the regular season. Yeah. So for you, when you kind of take a step back, what has impressed you the most about the Tigers in the first 91 games? And then what do you look forward to about the final 71? Because there's still a lot of baseball left to be played.
I think the thing that has impressed me most is the power. I don't think anybody had the power numbers that these guys are throwing up there. I know most people didn't have the 21 from Tarik. You might have had the 20 whatever Riley has, but you wouldn't have the 21 from Tarik. I think just overall the uptick in power. And when I say power, I don't mean just homers. I think we got to get away from that. It's more extra base hits. Seeing what Wenzel Perez is doing, what Colt Keith is doing. Not a lot of homers. He's got a gang of doubles. But so, you know, it's all of those things for me that have been the most impressive. We knew the pitching was going to be good. We hoped that Tommy Kahnle would be good in the role that he's being asked to be in, back into the bullpen. I think the step forward Will Best has taken has been very interesting and encouraging. So yeah, Casey Mize. Casey Mize coming off a season he wasn't necessarily, happy with last year. He's been fantastic. So there's a lot of things that I've been impressed with. And I don't know that surprise would probably be a little strong, but definitely impressed with and happy for.
You mentioned the power right off the bat. The Tigers are 8th in MLB with 116 home runs this season. I know you say it's not only home runs, it's also doubles, but I want to key in on what Riley Greene is doing, what Spencer Torkelson is doing, because, you tell me at the beginning of the season, you say, hey, Riley Greene is going to hit 22 home runs. I'd say, I take that for the year. But Riley Greene's doing that through 89 games this season. He is on pace for 30 home runs and more than that, right? Spencer Torkelson, there was a point in the offseason where it looks like he was going to be in AAA Toledo to start the season. If you would have said Spencer Torkelson's hitting 20 homers, I would have said, yeah, maybe as a mud hen, right? But he's doing it as a Tiger. So what has allowed these two guys in particular, guys that came up as, it was Tork and Green. That's what it was coming up the farm system at a certain point. What has allowed them to tap into this power at the rate that they're able to tap into it? Because it is unlike things that we've ever seen before. Yes, I know Tork hit 31 home runs back in 2023, but just what he's doing right now, the consistency of it, he's not just hitting homers in bunches. He's kind of just steadily hitting them as the season's gone along. And then Riley Greene's been on a tear. What are you seeing from those two guys and how are they getting to this power production? Yeah,
with Riley, I think you're seeing a natural progression of where he was a year ago. Yeah, 24 home runs and 500-ish at-bats a year ago. And now, like you said, with a, 2.5 months left on the schedule, he's too shy of that number. So I think you're seeing good health. I think you're seeing a natural progression of a good player who's stepping into becoming a star in this league. With Spencer Torkelson, he had to go back to work and really re-examine his setup, his approach, his mindset at the plate. And he did that. And like you said, he had to earn his way back. He had to earn his way on this team. He had to hit his way on. They told him as much. This isn't us just throwing that out there. They told him as much. And when faced with that challenge, he did it. Now you found out about him. You found out about what's inside that number 20 jersey of his. And it's been fantastic to watch. And I think he's proving something to himself. This guy's been through some stuff in this uniform. He was a 1-1. He was supposed to be this and he was supposed to be that. And he's all these things, right? And there was a lot of pressure placed on him to come up and be the aircraft carrier right at the gate. Well, it didn't work out that way. And I think sometimes, and this isn't a knock to fans want what they want. They want their team to be good. They want the guys that are supposed to be the high picks to be what they're supposed to be. And I think there was a boatload of pressure put on him that's not necessarily his fault. And you have to understand The big leagues is hard. The big leagues is hard for everybody, and especially for guys who are supposed to be, these great big, superstars and faces of the franchise and all that. And they put a lot of pressure on him, and it didn't work out quite the way that he envisioned it. Saw some success 2 years ago, struggled last year. But you find out about Spencer Torkelson, what he's made of. And it's been really fun to watch. It's good for him because, Evan, you're around him too. And, when you're in the clubhouse and stuff, we don't know these guys, but we know him enough to know these are good dudes. He's a good dude and he cares. He cares about his craft. He cares about all aspects of the game being complete. And it's really good to see him having some success. But the main thing for me, the home run he hit in Washington the other day is something he needs to have on his highlight reel constantly. If he strikes out, go watch it. If he gets a homer, go watch it. If he makes a good play in the field, go watch it. He needs to ingrain that into his mind. It was a 10-pitch at bat when he kept fouling pitches off, and it was a fastball down, and he didn't try to do too much with it, and it was in the middle of the plate, and he hits it out the dead center field in Washington. And gang, let me tell you something about DC in Nationals Park. You don't give up homers easy. You got to hit them. You hit one there, you've earned it. And he hit that out the dead center field, the deepest part of the yard. That was impressive. And that shows you what he can do to all fields and shows you what he can do in 2-strike counts. So just very impressed with both of those guys and what in the step forward they've taken this year.
I want to dig a little bit deeper on Riley Greene, another guy who hit home runs at Nationals Park, Progressive Field. He's done it everywhere. Do you even care that he's leading the big leagues with 116 strikeouts? Because he has 22 homers. He's got the 286 batting average. He's got the career high 879 OPS. He's doing it through 89 games. It seems like he has taken a big step forward in the overall production, despite a step backward with all the strikeouts. What are you seeing from him when it comes to the strikeouts versus just the rest of the production?
Do I care? Yeah, I care. Maybe I'm old school with mine. I care. I think he's too good a player to strike out that much. That said, I'm also not stupid. I love the production, right? Like you can't not love that production. The only thing I can liken where Riley is right now is I was fortunate enough, when I was with the Angels, I had Mike Trout. I didn't have him. He was already in the big leagues by the time I got there. But I remember one year, I want to say it was 14. Somebody fact check me. I'm sure they will. But at the break, he was leading the universe in strikeouts too and had a boatload of production and was having a typical Mike Trout year. And, there was, you have meetings throughout the year and basically we're like, this guy's going to end up striking out 250 times. We need to make some adjustments and he needs to make some adjustments. And it was pointed out to him what he needed to do. I'm not going to put his business in the street. And it was just approach wise. And he did. And he cut the strikeouts down in the second half and he continued to hit homers at the rate that he was hitting them. And I only say that because, I think Riley Greene is having an unbelievable year. He's an all-star. He's going to start the all-star game. But I think if you asked him, he wants to cut that number down too. He's not, who wants to be okay with just leading the league in strikeouts? That's not what he is. And I think he's a better player than that. I think you can keep up that kind of production and also cut that number down. So, it's a catch-22. Would I love for his numbers to be exactly where they are? Sure. Sometimes you got to give to get. But I do think that one of the things he wants to be is how do I want to say this? I'm sure he wants to be more difficult to strike out, but also too, continue with the same level of production that he's got right now.
What do you think that could do for him too? I mean, obviously he's starting the All-Star game, like you said, and he's been a great player and he has taken steps forward. It's also crazy to think that he's still only 24 years old. So he still has a lot of growing up to do.
Right. I mean, let's not forget about that either. Riley, I've said it on this podcast. Riley carries himself as a much older human but he's going to be 24. He's 24 years old playing this season at 24. So there's still their ceiling's not even in sight at all. And it's not something
that's crazy to think about. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I think the ceiling's not in sight and it's not, the strikeouts aren't something I'm worried about. Do I think they can get better? Absolutely. But at the same time, like you said, 22 and however many stakes and there's 89 games of baseball left. So yeah, do I think he can get better? Yeah. Does he want the strikeouts to come down? Certainly. Is it something that you hyper focus on and you take something away from his game? Absolutely not.
We talked about this earlier in the show. So I want to ask you, the Tigers have a 13.5 game lead over the Minnesota Twins in the American League Central. Then you got the Kansas City Royals. They're 14 games back. The Cleveland Guardians, 15.5 games back. Knock on wood or whatever you want to do if you're superstitious. But let's be real here, Bobby. Is this division race already over?
No, not by a long shot.
Really?
Not by a long. I don't think so. I genuinely don't think so. You've seen crazy stuff happen before.
Look at the Tigers last year.
That's a generational run that team went on. But just the fact that it happened means that it's possible. And, you look at the teams that a buddy of mine played on the 2007 Rockies, the run they went on to make the playoffs at the end of the year, that year. And there's been a couple times in history we've seen that, and we lived through one. Was it 30 and 11 or 34 and 11 down the stretch last year to get in? I mean, so is it possible? It's absolutely possible. The far from over, a hammer down, all-star break, all-star guys, go have a great experience. The rest of you guys go somewhere, take your minds off of, come back ready to work because the job's not done.
You've seen all these teams in the division, though. So if the Twins, Royals, or Guardians were to make an improbable comeback, and again, there's 45% of the season remaining. If one of those three teams were to make a push and ultimately win the AL Central and, take down the Tigers, right, with an incredible run, Twins, Royals, Guardians, what team do you think is most equipped to make a run like that?
Oh, boy. It's going to sound crazy, but I'm hard pressed to believe the Guardians are going to continue to struggle offensively the way they struggled this year. They can flat pitch, man.
They can pitch.
We saw it this series. You end up getting a few runs you get a run off Clase to tie it and then 6 off Cade Smith. That's not going to happen. Those are anomalies. Those guys' numbers and their stuff is tremendous. So you saw what Chacon did in game 2 of that series. You saw what Logan Allen's capable of doing. I mean, these guys were good. Their starters were really good. And even who pitched Gavin Williams today, like that's 3 good pitchers who shut down an offense that was capable of exploding for multiple runs and hitting a bunch of homers. And until the 10th inning today, you didn't get an explosion. So like I said, I'm hard pressed to believe that the Guardians are going to continue to struggle offensively the way they are. They don't have a lot of power, but they never have a lot of power, right? And that's just kind of what they do. And anytime you got Jose Ramirez in the lineup, all it's going to take is 1 or 2 people in that lineup getting hot to protect Jose Ramirez, because you saw it. AJ walked him twice this series and absolutely should have. And one time he was the go-ahead run to get to Santana. So that lets you know that there's one guy that they're going to circle on every time they get, there's a game. There's one guy in that lineup they're going to circle and he can't beat you. And if they can find some people to protect him a little bit, it might be a different story.
So the division race is not over yet. Let's talk about the trade deadline. It's coming up on July 31st. You've been an MLB player. You've been an MLB executive. You know how all this stuff works, from prospects in the minor leagues to superstars in the big leagues, from win now mode to long-term sustainability. From a personnel standpoint, the Tigers could use a high leverage reliever, probably 2 of them. They could use a middle of the rotation starting pitcher, and they could use a right-handed bat. Of those wants, what do you think is the biggest need? 2 high leverage relievers, 1 starting pitcher, 1 right-handed hitter. What do you think the Tigers need most of that grouping?
Well, look, I'm old school with mine. I think anytime you can add a starting pitcher to get you 15 to 18 outs, that never hurts the cause.
I don't think that makes you old school. I think everybody just needs pitching, right?
Well, some people, I mean, there's people that, well, right. And I think that's part of it. I think the question is, which one do you prioritize? Is it back in, bullpen? Is it, what is it? Like I said, I'm old school with mine. I love my starters to get me, 15 to 18 outs a game. And then you can give it to your bullpen. We've seen the bridge job that Tyler Holton did the other day was absolutely unbelievable to get it to Canely, to get it to Vest. So you got a bridge guy in Tyler Holton. Do you want another bridge guy like Tyler Holton? Sure. I don't think any of them, if you want all of them, you're not going to get all of them because you got the, you have to part with some big prospect capital to do it. That's ultimately the question. How much prospect capital is Scott willing to move to get 1, 2, 3 of those pieces, or just one of them? Or what is the opportunity cost there? So those questions aren't for me to answer. I've got my thoughts, but that's above my pay grade. But certainly, adding some pitching, never hurts the cause, and a right-handed bat for sure. Because if the season were to end today, you're probably going to run into, if you end up playing against the Yankees, you're going to end up running against Fried and Rondon. If you end up playing the Astros, you're going to see Hunter Brown, who's unbelievable, but you're also going to see Framber. So, that's the way I kind of look at that. But again, all of them, if you can, but how much are you willing to part with in the interest of long-term sustainability as well?
For sure. From an offensive standpoint, at the beginning of this season, I could have told you, give me Bo Bichette from the Toronto Blue Jays to play shortstop, or Nolan Arenado from the St. Louis Cardinals to play third base, or even Eugenio Suarez from the Arizona Diamondbacks to play third base. But now you got Javier Báez, an all-star who's playing shortstop. You got Zach McKinstry, nearly an all-star, contributing career best performance at third base. Like, Zach McKinstry's hitting .285 with an .812 OPS in 82 games, and he's a solid defender at so many different positions. My point is, how do you weigh, especially offensively with the, right-handed bat, how do you weigh what you have with what you could get, specifically as it pertains to the Tigers at the trade deadline in 2025 with a guy like Javier Báez or Bo Bichette? or Zach McKinstry or Nolan Arenado / Eugenio Suarez? How do you weigh what you have now with what you could get? Because maybe what you could get might not actually end up being as good as what you have right now.
That's why those guys sit in those big offices and make the money they make.
Like that's a tough scenario to have to try to internalize and figure out, right?
It is. I mean, and we'd be foolish to say this, current and future, money considerations are part of that as well. Where are these guys in their contracts?
Exactly.
What does that look like? I mean, there is a myriad of things you have to consider when you're trying to make one deal. That's one deal. The work that goes into actually constructing a trade that actually happens is immense. Like, that's the one thing I will remember. Everybody asks me, hey, what's the trade deadline look like? Is it hectic? Is it this? Is it that? Those meetings are marathon. The analysts, the scouts that have opinions, you have to, there's so many factors that go into every scenario that you draw up or that is floated your way by another front office group. It's ridiculous. And at some point, you got to make a decision. You can't keep asking for information. You got to make a decision. You got to say, this is what we're doing. And that's why, these jobs are hard. They're really hard because you have to balance all those things.
Speaking of Zach McKinstry, how valuable has he been to the Tigers in 2025?
Unbelievable. His contribution has been immense. I think what he did today in a nutshell is why he's so valuable and why he's been so good for this team. Torque gets hit. Clase hits him. 1 out. McKinstry comes out of the dugout. Pinch runs for Torque. Everybody in the building knows he's going to take off. Now you're saying, Clase's hard to run on. He's really not. I don't know. I don't have a stopwatch, but just his motion is 90. He's 1.45, 1.5 to the plate. He's not quick to the plate. Zach didn't wait around. First time he lifted his leg, he takes off, slides into second. They call him out. Replay. He's safe by a lot too, actually, but that's a whole different discussion for another time. But he's safe. Then he ends up on third base. And you're thinking, okay, if one of these sliders he throws or he throws a Scud missile with one of these 99-mile-an-hour cutters gets away, he should take a crack at going. And sure enough, boom, that next pitch squirts right between Naylor's legs. He scores. Then he has to go in because he's pinch ran for Torque. He's got to play a position he's never played in the big leagues. And so I'm sure maybe he's taking some ground balls over there just to mess around because that's kind of what you do. But how much time is he actually taking? Then in true baseball fashion, he gets a ground. The white rat's going to find you. That ball is going to find you if you come in the game defensively, and it finds him. And it's that nuanced play where he's got to go a couple steps to his right. Then he's got to hit a moving target on the run, but he's got to lead him and he's got to throw it soft enough to where he's not blowing him up, but he's got to lead him to where he can run through it and then touch the bag. And he throws a perfect strike to Chase Lee to get him out. That's Zach McKinstry. That doesn't show up in the scorebook. That doesn't show up in the stats. You're not going to ex-WOBA that. You're not going to ex-FIP that. Whatever advanced metric you want to do, that's winning baseball player. That's why he's an all-star. Yes, it's 286. And yes, he's murdering lefties. And yes, he's got his share of extra base hits. And yes, he's bounced all around the field. But that today, what he did in that game, his presence in that game and his effect on that game is why he's an all-star. I don't care what anybody says. He's an all-star. I know he didn't make it. Hopefully, well, I don't hope for injury, but if there's an injury, he could be a replacement for that player. But I'm telling you right now, that's why he's so valuable on a winning team.
And if there's not an injury, and let's say that he doesn't get on the All-Star team, how about Gold Glove at the utility position? I think we need to be talking about that because he can move around and do so many different things. It's spectacular. Bobby, you talk about the starting rotation, needing another starting pitcher maybe. Are you concerned about this rotation at all? You have Tarik Skubal. He's the best pitcher in baseball. Casey Mize, one of the front runners for comeback player of the year. But Jack Flaherty, he's been inconsistent. Reese Olson is only now returning from a longer than expected stint on the injured list. Jackson Jobe is out for the season. Kiter Montero, he's been in AAA Toledo. Sawyer Gipson-Long, he's injured. What do you think about the rotation? Are you worried at all? Or do you think that the Skubal, Mize, Flaherty, Olson combination is enough to carry the Tigers deep into the postseason? Because when all four of those guys are right, those are four pretty good starters in Skubal, Mize, Flaherty, and Olson.
Yeah, they are. I think that's absolutely fair. I mean, you certainly would, I think Sawyer Gipson-Long adds to that mix and Kiter Montero. So that if that's kind of your fifth starter group, you're fine with that. But those front four are pretty good. Like you said, Jack has been a touch inconsistent this year. But when Reese Olson is right and he's on the mound, you saw what he can do. He's outstanding. Casey Mize, the version of Casey Mize we've seen lately, including this start here on Sunday against the Guardians, or on Saturday against the Guardians, that was dominant stuff. No, it wasn't a bunch of swing and miss, but what he was doing with that four-seamer down and that splitter at the bottom of the zone, just making you hit the ball in the ground because you got to wait that split second longer to hit it. You can't, I mean, that's fantastic. And then there's Skubal. He's just on a different planet right now. So that's a good four. Would you like to add another guy that can start and maybe in a playoff scenario end up in the bullpen as one of your top options? Sure. Yeah, I would. But if you would go to battle with those four in a combination of Montero, Sawyer, Gibson, Long, and who knows, there may be somebody else on the horizon that most Tiger fans who focus on Detroit don't know about and don't dip into the minor leagues and what's coming. Look, we saw Jackson Jobe make one appearance and then pitch in the playoffs last year, right? So the one thing I'll say about these guys, whether it be AJ or whether it be Scott Harris or Jeff Greenberg, they're not afraid to promote from within. If you're getting it done and you're getting outs and it looks the way it needs to look, both from a metrics perspective and from an old school scouting perspective, they'll pull you up and put you on the old English D and say, do it up here. So there may be guys that are coming that people don't really know about or maybe a little bit off the radar.
Yeah, one name for sure there, Troy Melton. Watch out for him. He's in AAA Toledo right now. It's a 3.71 ERA, 6 walks and 40 strikeouts in 26 and 2/3 innings working as a starting pitcher. He recently was promoted from Erie to Toledo, and he's been just absolutely dynamite since joining the Mud Hens. He could be an internal option that the Tigers could go with. But you mentioned Casey Mize and what he did on Saturday against the Guardians. He has been such an underrated value for this team. It's a 2.63 ERA and 15 starts. And to your point about the swing and miss, like it's not always sexy, but this guy finds a way and he grinds his way through his outings. And even when there's runners on base, he seems like he never flinches. What do you like about what Casey Mize is doing on the mound? And why do you think he's finding so much success this season?
Well, I think part of it is a couple of things. Number one, he realized he needed to be better than he was a year ago. If this team was going to reach the potential that they can reach, and he was going to reach his own potential, he needed to change some things. So he went to work. He figured out he was a four-seamer at the top of the zone guy for most of his career. He figured out how to get the four-seamer down. Now, what that's going to do, he's going to play up that split. And what I mean by that is if you are a hitter and you're seeing a guy throw four-seamers at the top of the zone, split down in the zone, as soon as I recognize that split spin and it's below a certain line that I have created for myself, my sight lines, I'm just checking off. Now, it's easier said than done, right? But it's a lot easier if I just know he's four-seam at the top because that's going to come out of a different spot visually than it will the four-seam at the bottom. Now, he started to throw that four-seam at the bottom and he's nailing that bottom rail. He throw that four-seam at the bottom and you're throwing that split at the bottom too and it drops out of the zone. It strike the ball out of the zone. Now I have to respect that. And what happens is you want to see that pitch for a split second longer. And a split second is like a foot or two, if that. Right? And that's all you need to throw off the contact point to get the four-seamer off the ground. You hit that four-seamer here, okay, and it's a line drive somewhere. You hit that four-seamer right here, and it's a ground ball to shortstop or second base. And so that's all the difference. That's why you saw all those ground balls from the Guardians yesterday. On top of that, the slider, he liked the slider, but the metrics liked the slider, but he wasn't getting the kinds of swings and misses or hard or poor contact off that slider that he needed to get in actual games. So he went to work. He worked on 3 different ones. He settled on 2. That bullet slider is a little short one, doesn't have a lot of depth. It's got a little short horizontal movement to his glove side. And that's something he's been able to throw in the zone for strikes, in the zone to get some mishits, and he can throw it below the zone and strike the ball if he wants to. The bigger one, it's more slurvy. If you're looking at the hands on the clock, it's a more probably 2 to 8, maybe even 3 to 9 will create a little depth with that slider, and it's a little bigger. He can throw that in the zone for the strike as well, or especially you've seen him do it back foot slider to left-handed hitters. That's why he's been more effective. He went to work on his arsenal. He figured out how to throw the fastball down. He's throwing a split off of it. Now he's got 2 sliders to play with that he can get in the zone and both below the zone for strikes if he needs to. So his redevelopment of his arsenal and then his execution of it has been flawless this year. It's been outstanding, and it's good to see.
One question a lot of people always ask me is Evan, what is it like watching Tarik Skubal right now? And so then I like to explain what it's like, and it's just the greatest thing in the world because he's the greatest pitcher in the world right now. But Bobby, I mean, you're there every day just like me. You've seen all of his starts. What is it like for you to sit back? And you've got a lot of years in this game, man. As a player, as an executive, you've seen a lot of things. You've been overseas. You've been in the minor leagues. You've been in the big leagues. Like, you've seen a lot in this game. What's it like watching Tarik Skubal as it stacks up to what you've seen in your entire career in this game?
Well, I will be honest with you. This is what it was like to see Trout, honestly, to have the opportunity to be on the inside there and watch Mike Trout play baseball every single day. You realize how good this guy is. Like and you don't take it for granted. He is elite right now. He's in the elite of the elite. There's an upper room. He's in it. And he's not just in it. He's dominating in it. And the thing that I like best about Skubal is he recognized, yes, I'm good. I had a really good year last year. I'm going to continue to get better, but I don't need to reshape my arsenal. I don't need to get exponentially better. We're just working on the margins here. Let's not do anything crazy and then jeopardize the success he's had by trying to, like Tiger Woods goes out and wins 3 majors, then has to revamp his swing. Like, why? You don't have to. You're already that much better than everybody else. And his work ethic, I think that he knows the work that it takes to be in that, to get on top. And he's continuing to raise the bar there. But as far as the pitches, as far as what he's doing, doesn't mean he's not working on stuff, but he's not revamping anything. Fastball, boom, plays top of the zone wherever he wants to. 98, 97, 98 comes out like a missile. He knows that changeup is his pitch and he throws it whenever, has the confidence to throw it any count, both-handed hitters. The slider is a really good pitch for him. He can move it around the zone. He knows that. These are the things I'm going to add a split this year. No, there's none of that going on. There's no need for that. Just win on the margins, continue to win on the margins, 1% better every time out. And that's what he's focused on. And and he said that himself that in Seattle. I remember in the opening series of the year. So that's just watching him in his competitive nature, man. That's what I like. His competitive nature. Like he enjoys the fight and he wants to strike you out and beat you up, but then he'll tip his cap to you if you clip him, or he enjoys those battles with like the Salvi Perez's of the world and the Ramirez's of the world. There's a head nod between two big dogs when they're going at it. I just appreciate the competitive nature of Tarik Skubal.
Game respects game, no doubt about it.
Yeah. That's it.
I want to ask about a couple of the players really quick before we get you out of here.
Sure.
Colt Keith, first and foremost, since early May, hitting around 300 in just less than 50 games. We talk about how young Riley Greene is, right? 24 years old. Well, Colt Keith's even younger. He's 23 years old. So for Colt Keith, what he's doing right now, like I said, since early May, it's about a 300 batting average. He's been a slow starter in each of the past 2 years. Maybe that's something that he needs to overcome. I don't know if you have any insight on how to get off to a better start in years forward. But for Colt Keith, what is the next step in his development? Is it just getting off to a better start? Is it hitting for a little bit more power? What are you looking to see from Colt Keith as he matures and as he grows and as he gets into his age 24 and age 25 and age 26 season? Because he still has a lot of growing up to do as well.
Sure he does. And I think the power will come. I'm not worried about the power. My stance on this. You start chasing the power, you ruin the hitter. Right. What you're seeing right now is an emerging, young, very good hitter. The move to the leadoff spot's been great. And I think the cool thing about him is he hasn't changed who he is as a hitter. Just because you're hitting first doesn't mean you have to take 2 strikes, try to hit it to left field, and then start stealing bases. That's not who he is. It's never going to be who he is. But he's a guy who's very comfortable with what he's doing right now, his approach. And he just, I actually interviewed him the other day and he said, I wasn't feeling good with how I was feeling the ball, so I decided to back the ball up a little bit. And when I say back the ball up, you're talking, again, the same margins we're talking about with Casey Mize are the ones we're talking about with Colt Keith. It's just a little bit. Just make sure you get a good sight line on it and then lay good wood to it. And he has been absolutely scorching balls the other way. They're throwing him over there. They're pitching him over there. And he's not trying to do too much. We saw that stretch in the beginning of last year when Colt was trying to do too much. And he was taking those balls. They were pitching them over there and he was rolling over to second base or hitting weak grounder toppers to first base, stuff like that. This year, you're seeing a more mature, more comfortable hitter in his own skin, take those balls and smash them to right. He's not filleting these balls to left field. He's crushing these balls to left field. And that for me is the sign of a young man who is comfortable where he is, understand there's more left in there, but this is what I'm going to do right now. And it's effective. The growth for him, he will get more and more comfortable understanding his contact points, and you will see him start hitting balls out the center and to right field. And even right now, if you throw him a fastball in, he can get there. You throw him a hanging breaking ball, he can get there and hit it out pull side. But he's learning how to hit and be an effective hitter at the major league level. And for me, there's value in that. You start chasing the power, you ruin hitters. You just see guys that are trying to, you open up your hips, you open up your shoulders, and he just makes you exposed to too many different things. He's not doing that.
AJ Hinch always says that the leadoff hitter only leads off once per game. And I like the fact that Colt Keith has not changed who he is as a hitter as a whole because he is in that leadoff spot. Because again, you only lead off one time in a single game. It's been really impressive to watch what he's been able to do in that role. Last thing I want to ask you about is Gleyber Torres at the top of that lineup as well. What's the impact of Gleyber Torres? A guy who comes in here on a 1-year, $15 million contract. He wants to get to a 9-figure deal. That's why he signed with the Tigers. He's looking forward to that. And he bet on himself. And you know what? It's paid off both for him and for the Tigers. What impresses you the most about the way Gleyber Torres plays? And when you go back to when the Tigers signed him, like, he hadn't been doing what he's doing right now in New York. Like, that was not something that he was doing. Yes, he had the big power numbers earlier in his career, but Gleyber Torres was not a guy who walked more than he struck out with the New York Yankees in years past. So I'm not asking you if it was a surprise, but just like, what's impressed you the most about him? Because this maybe wasn't what I expected. I don't know what you expected out of him. I thought he'd be a good hitter, but I didn't expect him to be this kind of an impact bat at the top of the lineup. But what have been your takeaways from him this season?
Steady, incredibly steady.
And that means the world to an offense, doesn't it?
When you hear that, a lot of times people will say, well, steady, that's just kind of, no, that's everything in this game. This game is a marathon.
And it's a roller coaster for a lot of players.
And he doesn't get on it. He refuses to ride the roller coaster emotionally. There's two reasons why. I think I've talked to people who knew him when he was with the Cubs and he was 17 years old. Okay. He's with the Cubs. He was in that Chapman deal before he got to the Yankees, right? So I've talked to people who had him in the Cubs system, and they're like, the guy you're seeing right now is the same guy that showed up from Venezuela at 17. That's who he is. He's a steady human, slow heartbeat. He's steady, and it translates in his game. 0 for 3, couple punch outs, roll over, shows up the next day, 2 for 4, double, homer, makes a great play on defense, makes a smart base running play, steady. And that, when you got a relatively young group of big major leaguers, some of these guys aren't all that young, but do you have a relatively young group of major leaguers? I'm a big believer that the attitude reflects your leadership. And you just see him, you just look across the clubhouse and you see 25 and he's like this all the time. You can't help but be that way. And he's like this on defense. He's like this on offense. He's like this running the bases. He's probably like this when he eats his pregame meal. Like, that's who he is, steady. And that's impressive. Also, he's been through it. You can say what you want. That New York market is a monster. You've seen it eat up guys that just simply can't perform there. He's performed in that market. He's also struggled in that market. He's been steady. And that, for me, is the most impressive thing he is just himself. And he's steady. The way he goes about his at-bats, the ways he goes about his work. He's better defensively than he was a year ago. And that was the major question. You know, for a team that values throwing strikes and catching the baseball and run prevention, is it going to be enough at second base? It's been more than enough. So his steadiness, his improvement defensively, and how he leads by just being himself.
So many great topics, Bobby. I think we talked about almost every player on the active roster. We probably could keep going and talk for another 35, 40 minutes. But man, thank you for coming back on the Days of Roar podcast. It is always a treat, and we'll talk to you again soon.
You know it. I'm anytime you call, I'm answering. So it's all good.
Everyone, that was Bobby Scales, radio analyst for the Detroit Tigers. We have more to discuss this week, including some top prospects getting promoted. But first, let's take a break. All right, we're back. Everyone, it was awesome to have Bobby Scales on the podcast once again. We had two incredible guests this week, Bobby Scales, Scott Bentley. Can't thank those guys enough for helping us out. Before we get out of here, a couple of injury notes. Kerry Carpenter was placed on the 10-day injured list July 2nd, retroactive to June 30th with a right hamstring strain. He left the game June 29th in the 5th inning. That was the Sunday night baseball game against the Twins. He felt tightness in his hamstring while running in the field. Then he felt more discomfort while running the bases. Kerry Carpenter is eligible to return to the Tigers on July 10th, but the final game before the All-Star break is July 13th. So we'll see if the Tigers push Carpenter to get back for the 3-game weekend series against the Seattle Mariners, or if the Tigers just wait until after the All-Star break. It would make some sense for the Tigers to just wait until after the All-Star break. That would give Kerry Carpenter 18 days rather than just 10 days to let his hamstring heal up and be ready to withstand the grind of the final 3 months, which includes the postseason. As for the bigger picture, Kerry Carpenter has now landed on the injured list in each of his 4 MLB seasons. Left lumbar spine strain in September 2022, right shoulder sprain in April 2023, lumbar spine stress fracture in May 2024, and right hamstring strain in July 2025. I bet the Tigers take a cautious approach here and just wait until after the All-Star break, but we'll see if Carpenter is back on the field by the weekend series against the Mariners. If he's not back with the team by that Friday series opener against the Mariners, you can bank on the fact that he'll be coming back July 18th against the Texas Rangers in Arlington, Texas, coming out of the All-Star break. That is probably the more conservative approach and maybe the best approach the Tigers could take with Kerry Carpenter and the hamstring issue. It's been bugging him all year long. In better news, Reese Olson returned from the injured list July 4th and started against the Guardians. He allowed 1 run on 6 hits and 1 walk with 3 strikeouts across 4 1/3 innings, throwing 89 pitches. It was his first start for the Tigers since May 17th, an absence of 48 days. He has a 2.89 ERA in 10 starts, placing himself as the Tigers' number 3 starter behind Tarik Skubal and Casey Mize, at least based on ERA. Meanwhile, Jack Flaherty has a 4.84 ERA in 17 starts. But Tarik Skubal has a 2.02 ERA in 18 starts. Casey Mize has a 2.63 ERA in 15 starts. And Reese Olson has a 2.89 ERA in 10 starts. It always helps to have 3 sub-3 ERA pitchers. So as much as I talk about, hey, maybe it's okay to be worried about the Tigers pitching staff because since June 1st, they've been 16th in MLB with an ERA north of 4 across the entire pitching staff. You still have 3 starting pitchers who have sub-3 ERAs. That's always a good thing. If those guys keep doing what they're doing, the Tigers are probably going to be okay, and hopefully Jack Flaherty can find some consistency in performance. Then on the farm system, Kevin McGonigal, Max Clark, Josue Briseño finally get promoted from High A West Michigan to Double A Erie. That happened on Sunday. Kevin McGonigal is a 20-year-old left-handed hitting shortstop who probably ends up at third base or second base. He was selected at number 37 overall in the 2023 draft out of high school. He is the Tigers' number 1 prospect, according to MLB Pipeline. In High A West Michigan, Kevin McGonigal hit .372 with 7 home runs, 23 walks, and 19 strikeouts in 36 games. Max Clark is a 20-year-old left-handed hitting center fielder who projects to stick in center field. He was selected number 3 overall in the 2023 draft out of high school. He is the Tigers' number 2 prospect, according to MLB Pipeline. In High West Michigan, Max Clark hit .285 with 7 home runs, 65 walks, and 56 strikeouts in 68 games. Last but certainly not least, Josue Briseño. He is a 20-year-old catcher/first baseman who is expected to become a full-time first baseman at some point in the future. He was signed out of Venezuela in January 2022 for an $800,000 signing bonus. He is the Tigers' number 4 prospect, according to MLB Pipeline. In High West Michigan, Josue Briseño hit .296 with 15 home runs, 41 walks, and 40 strikeouts in 55 games. The next assignment, Double A Erie, is generally the make or break level for players, especially hitters. So we'll see what Kevin McGonigal, Max Clark, and Josue Briseño accomplish as Seawolves. Congrats to all 3 of them on the promotion. All right, it's time to get out of here. Thanks for listening to the latest episode of Days of Roar. Please like, rate, share, and subscribe. Stick with freep.com/sports for the latest Tigers coverage. Our staff will have you covered while I'm on paternity leave. I'd like to thank the editor of the Free Press, Nicole Avery Nichols, sports editor Bill Bradley, and our magical producer, Robin Chan. For the Detroit Free Press, I'm Evan Petzold. We'll catch you next week. Until then, go in peace.